Coming off of Poor Things, Yorgos Lanthimos is back again, and this time he has an anthology film called Kinds of Kindness. Now, this has a pretty bad score in the audience department on Rotten Tomatoes. So do I fall in line with the audience score here, or do I think this movie is pretty good? Well, stick around, and let's talk about it. Kinds of Kindness is separated into three stories. The first story is about a fable following a man without choice who tries to take control of his own life. The second one is about a policeman who is alarmed that his wife, who is missing at sea, has returned and seems a different person. And the third story is about a woman determined to find a specific someone with a special ability who is destined to become a spiritual leader. The film stars Emmastone, Jesse Plemons, Willem Dafoe, Margaret Qualley, Chau, and Mamoudou Athie, and was directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, and he's done films like Poor Things, The Lobster, and The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Kinds of Kindness. Now, there is a trailer out there that I did watch for this film, and it completely does not explain anything in that trailer, which is kind of good, but it's also kind of bad as well because of just how this movie is really structured, and really three movies into one with a runtime of 2 hours and 45 minutes. Now, I'll go ahead and just break down each individual story. The first story is called The Death of RMF, and this story, it centralizes around Willem Dafoe, who is a very rich person who is controlling Jesse Plemons, who basically has to do anything that Willem Dafoe says, and he has everything really just told to him that he has to do, and everything is controlled throughout his entire life. Like, he had his wife picked out, he had his house picked out, he has to have a certain type of weight for Willem Dafoe, and Willem Dafoe wants him to do this particular job in which he really just doesn't want to do, and because he refuses to do that, Willem Dafoe just cuts him off, and he hires Emmastone to do the same exact job. But before he does that, he does attempt to do this job in which he has to kill someone, in which he fails in an auto accident, and after he gets a back injury, he's like, yeah, I don't want to do this again, and that's when Willem Dafoe cuts him off. Now, this really reminded me of like working at a job and you don't want to do a certain job, and then later on within that story, you kind of come around in a way, and that's really what this one film is. It's mainly just somebody that is just kissing someone's ass throughout this film, and because they're doing that, they really don't have a sense of identity. Everything is just kind of told exactly what they have to do, and Willem Dafoe is controlling, and he's rich, obviously, so he has a lot of power. So it's a lot about power throughout this story, and I think this was probably the best story. It has some really weird music. It has a banging of the piano, which is just kind of like ding, 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 and it's like very horror-like, and then you have this chorus in the background with the piano as well, which was kind of like harmonizing, going ooh. It's like really something like that, but it's more so in the horror aspect. And I did like that music towards the beginning right there because it did feel like a horror type of story, and I was the most intrigued with this story. The second story is RMF is Flying, and this follows Jesse Plemons and Emmastone, who are married. Emmastone is a scientist, Jesse Plemons is a policeman, and one day Emmastone goes out on a boating trip and she goes missing with a bunch of other people. And one day she ends up showing back up at the doorstep, and Jesse Plemons is not convinced that is her. And the reason for that is she can't remember his favorite meals, she can't even remember his favorite song, and this really ticks him off. And so he's convinced that she's like an alien of some sort. He does some strange things to really see if she's really the woman that is the one that he married. So there's one point where he's not actually eating, and at one point she's like, I'll make you anything, I'll cook you anything, and he says, you need to cut off your thumb and cook it. So she actually does that, serves it to him, and he says to her, yeah, I didn't eat that thumb, I fed it to the cat. So certain little things that happen throughout that are very strange like that. He starts to act really strange on the police force, in which this is where the movie started to turn for me and was just a little bit out there for me. And towards the end of that film, something does get resolved. It's very strange, and it feels very much kind of sitcom-ish, the way that it's presented towards the end there. It really was a really strange story. The third story is RMF Eats a Sandwich. Now, this story is the weirdest of them all, and this is where I was just like, this is getting worse and worse. Now, this story is about a sex cult in which Willem Dafoe and Chau are married. And they have this checker, Chau, who every time they have sex with someone, they lick the sweat off their body to see if they're contaminated or not. Meanwhile, they're looking for a spiritual leader in which they have to be a woman, they have to have a twin, and they're trying to bring someone back to life. Then they also have Emmastone, who's a part of this group, who has a husband and kids, and she can't see those kids or husband. And then one day she decides to sneak off from the sex cult. And apparently she gets raped by her husband, which I didn't understand that part. And when she comes back, she is found contaminated and they kick her out of the sex cult. Now, this story just gets stranger and stranger by the minute. I was very much checking out. They bring on the piano music back again in this, and it gets very annoying, agitating. They bring back the spiritual course here, which again, it's just very annoying at points because it seems like they just kind of do this. They sprinkle it a little bit in the second film, but then they go to this third film and they go all out with it, and it just is super weird, super strange. And there's just certain things in here that is just very weird. So let's wrap up all three films and just tell you from a story perspective. Obviously, you know that none of these actually match up. All the same actors and actresses are in each story, but they're obviously playing a different role. Now, each story, there's a lot of interesting things and certain subject matter that is brought up that I think is interesting, but I just felt like a lot of times each story kind of felt kind of tedious. They don't really explain certain things, and it just feels very artsy for the sake of artsy. It feels like three rough drafts that are just slapped together, and it feels like it's just trying to go very strange because he just came off of Poor Things. But this one, it just doesn't have a lot of style. Each story doesn't feel like it's its own style. It feels like it's the same kind of thing within each story. It doesn't feel like there's anything special in the cinematography. It doesn't feel like they're doing anything different with the music because, like I said, they have this piano that they're playing, which it almost feels like you have a little kid that just bangs on one of the piano keys. Like if you bang on one of the higher key note piano keys, you have that. You have the lower one. That kind of thing is what they're doing here, where they're experimenting with the piano. And I think I would say it's kind of horror-ish in a way. There is a little bit of violence, obviously, but it's just so out there, guys. It's just so strange. And it's very daunting to sit there for 2 hours and 45 minutes. I had watched another movie previously, Daddy-O, which I didn't enjoy at all. And I was at the theater for a total of about 4.5 hours. So can imagine after watching Daddy-O, where you're sitting there listening to a TED Talk and then going to this movie where you have three stories that are really out there. They have no cohesion of wrapping up together, obviously being an anthology. Usually when I come out of a movie like this, I usually can say, okay, I think the director was trying to say this message and say this. But I don't know if there's a message in any of these films at all, or if he was trying to say really anything. I didn't get it whatsoever. When I saw Poor Things, I knew exactly what he was going for. But with this one, I just don't know what these stories really are trying to say. There's some dry humor. There is some nudity, which there isn't anywhere near the amount that was in Poor Things. The dialogue is very strange between the characters at points and just how they are spoken, and some of the lines that they say are kind of delayed, and it feels like it's on the movie, like with the audio, or there's something going on with the film, but it's not that. It's just the way that that's how the film was actually designed. The characters are obviously weird, bizarre. Everything is very strange about it altogether. So what score would I give this film? I would give it a 2 out of 5. I would say I was kind of intrigued with the first story. The second story, it started to take a turn. The third story is completely out there for me. But overall, I can't say that I really enjoyed this film. I know the average Joe is not going to like this film. I did see on Letterboxd it has a 3.5 out of 5. So more power to those people that are actually enjoying this film. I hope you got something out of it, because I didn't get a darn thing out of this film, and I felt like it was just not very good and pleasant to sit in a theater to watch this film. However, if he does make another film, I definitely will check it out. I think he should probably stay away from anthology films. So what did you guys think about Kinds of Kindness? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you just think it was kind of meh? If you haven't checked it out in a theater, are you going to check it out when it comes to streaming or VOD? And comment below, what is your favorite anthology? I have not watched a lot of anthologies, but the one that has stuck out to me that I did like is Creepshow. I've only seen the first one, but that one definitely stood out to me, and it's probably my favorite one of all the ones that I've watched, because I haven't watched a lot in my lifetime. But anyway, thank you guys for watching as always, and I will see you guys next time.